So the theme of this show is, can anybody in the US take on Tesla? You know, every time it seemed that there would be a new vehicle coming out that was an EV, they'd say, oh, it's a Tesla beater. I would maintain that nobody can really beat them, but taking them on is the issue. Do you think anybody can do it? Greg?
If Tesla has a vulnerable flank, I think it's more on the trucks and SUVs.
Sebastian?
I absolutely think someone can take on Tesla. The amount of investment that we see across the industry proves that they're both willing and, I believe, able to take on Tesla. In the US especially, they have such a lead, but that can't last forever. I don't believe that will.
Forever is a long time.
Exactly.
Steph?
Forever is a very long time. Didn't we, right, somewhere in the last couple of days, the fact that GM used to have 50% US market share came up. So, that wasn't forever ago, was it? It was just 60 years or so. There's opportunity for somebody to take on Tesla. I think what we really need to remember here is we're talking about a transformation of the industry as a whole. It's not just about electric. It's about converting ICE buyers into electric buyers. And that's going to take more than one brand. It's going to take more than one attitude. It's going to take more than one company. So I think that other companies will be able to. The question really that we're seeing is it's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to be in 2024 that you're suddenly going to go, whoa, this other XYZ company in the US is really taking all of Tesla's share. And we really do see, Tesla can dominate the EV side of the market for a good another decade. So even as we have other automakers coming in with really credible product, with product that consumers like, when they finally get all of the production stuff down and they get the inventory where they want it, it doesn't mean that Tesla will not still be the leader in the segment. Tesla may still be the leader. They just won't be alone anymore.
Brett?
What she said.
That's convenient.
With a couple of caveats, Tesla's just going to run roughshod over the competition. How many times have we heard someone say, hey, this is the Tesla beater? Just that transformation right now is so difficult for these companies.
Finally, Brett is providing a voice of reason, because it seems that Greg, Sebastian, and Stephanie are clinging to the fact that at one point in time, GM had a 50% US market share. And because they squandered that also Tesla will somehow have their market share diminished. And of course, history is often cyclical, but Tesla is not GM. If you know Elon, he does everything in his power to maintain the startup culture at Tesla, often appointing these crazy deadlines on sometimes pointless projects to extract as much as he can out of his employees and of himself. GM got bloated, they unionized, and they outsourced all of their software components, and they outsourced all of their parts, and they adopted a dealership network. And for Tesla, while it may be impossible to maintain a 60% EV market share in the US, Elon has done the impossible many times. And Tesla's market share is not going to fall all the way down to 17% as GM has let happen to them in the auto market in the US. And we've been talking about the competition for a decade now and they're still not here. So how long are we going to have this conversation for? So as we watch this Autoline live stream, I am going to be questioning some of the things that they say, because I seem to forecast the competitive landscape of the auto market going forward to look a little bit differently than some of these people do.
We're still early days. Transformation in the auto industry can't take 5 years. It's going to take 25.
Stephanie, do these car companies have 20 years to make it?
Yes. And not every single company can, but I'm not going to call who's going to survive the next 5 years and who's going to go under. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But
Sebastian, you do that.
Yeah, you can do that, Sebastian. I'll let you do that.
On the point of something changing recently, my question for the group, because I can't think of a recent time when we really thought of a new EV as a compliance car, something we certainly heard many, many times in the 2010s from many, many automakers. Like you said, that isn't quite the mentality anymore of these, well, we need to for the credits, we need to hit our CAFE standards, whatever it was at the different times, or to have something to placate our customers. Now you're right. It's like, okay, fine. We'll design a whole new platform. We'll make whole new deals with different battery partners. We'll do all this new technology that can take advantage of this new platform. And then our new cars will come out. And some of those are here. Some of those are still coming. But Tesla's been around, what are we at here? 20-ish years now. But the real fight has only just started. I agree.
All right. So Sebastian, clarify this for me. So basically what you're saying is that for a number of years, the traditional OEMs half-assed their efforts on EVs.
Some of them did for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and now they're saying we're going to do it. Okay, so if I'm a consumer and I say to myself, well, wait a minute, they had all those those crappy cars before. Why should I believe they have a good one now?
Fair question. I would think that anybody who is still trying to answer that right now knows enough about the history to know these things. If you're just coming into it with where you didn't think about an EV, you don't even know the term compliance car, you're just going shopping right now, I don't think that's part of the conversation. You might know that someone had an EV, but all you know is, oh, now my neighbor has one and I want to get one. I don't think that history is going to negatively affect new buyers, and the people who know that there was such a thing as a compliance car should also know that that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, what? Gary just asked him, how are consumers going to know that Legacy is now taking this seriously, that they're not just making compliance EVs and they're actually making good products now? And Sebastian just responds and says, well, if consumers didn't know that their EVs were garbage, then it's not going to affect them. And then he says, and if they did know that they were garbage, well, then they should just know that they're not garbage anymore. Like, what? Isn't like the number one rule in marketing that you should never assume that consumers know anything? How are people going to know that their horrible products are all of a sudden awesome? I mean, we've seen a huge rollback lately from Legacy, dialing back all of their EV plans because they've said that there's not as much demand as they thought. Well, maybe that's because you've traumatized everybody with your horrible compliance garbage EV products or whatever they were. And now nobody wants to buy EVs anymore. We're seeing adoption flatten out at 7%. Tesla is still the only player in the US that is making an EV that is actually compelling and affordable.
Have we got to the point where they're not making compliance cars, but are they making aspirational electric vehicles for the broader market yet?
So okay, here's something that shocked me. I sent you all yesterday some numbers that were the first 6 months of the year. Kelley Blue Book came out with numbers through Q3 today, so you guys haven't heard these numbers yet. Tesla sales, okay, in the United States through the third quarter were 493,513 vehicles sold in the United States. In second place, Chevy, 49,531. Okay, it's like a factor increase, and so one of the headlines from Cox Automotive, who put this thing together, was that Tesla now only has the aforementioned 50% of the market. Okay, but the market has gotten bigger. Brett, you've studied manufacturing a lot. All of these companies that have 50,000, 30,000, 20,000 sales, where are the economies of scale?
Scale isn't there, and it won't be for a long time. Obviously, GM loves to talk about the Ultium platform, and there's some real value in that. But yeah, these vehicles are low volume. And Gary, I remember our friend John McElroy and myself sitting in the Milan Correctional Institution visiting a friend 5 years ago. John talking about by 23, 24, there's going to be this bloodletting of vehicles because there's going to be so many models out there, and there's going to be relatively few buyers, and nobody's going to get that scale. And I think John's had it right on almost to the date when he talked about 24 model year, where we're getting to a point where, as Sebastian pointed out, they're no longer compliance vehicles. There's some really exciting stuff, and there's lots of them, but none of them are at volume except for Tesla. And really, Tesla is getting all their volume from the Model 3 platform, and they're crushing it with that. And for these companies that have based their existence on volume and scale, that's a long, murky middle to get through.
Yeah, and I mean, I've already been beating this drum for you guys. It's going to be incredibly hard for Legacy to reach a profitable scale in EVs. They need to transition their factories to incorporate more automation. They're going to have to navigate these union demands. They're going to have to ramp up their battery production. They should probably bring software in-house so they can provide over-the-air updates. I mean, they're going to have to start selling direct to consumer, and it's just going to be incredibly hard to get out of all of this infrastructure they got bound with as they got into bed with unions and dealerships. And it's going to be a huge order for OEMs. The industry has changed because for a long time, OEMs made money on parts and repairs. But now that EVs require less maintenance, they need to figure out how to make EVs profitably, and their prospects of that right now are very grim.
Well, so it's interesting. So, Greg, your colleagues over at Yahoo Finance did a survey of electric vehicle intenders and possible buyers, and this poll was taken September 29th through October 1st, so it's really fresh. and, talking about who people think of. And the company that came in number one as people were thinking about buying an electric vehicle was Toyota at 30%. Tesla came in second at 23%. Honda third at 20%. GM fourth at 15%, and Ford at 14%. Okay, so let's see how many electric vehicles has Toyota sold through October, or through the third quarter?
I think maybe they've sold like 3x49 number of cars.
Well, it was a little better than that, Sebastian.
I was just trying to make a joke about the terrible naming.
Yes. So they sold 6,500. Let's see.
But this is the power brand, because the question isn't what EVs are out there, because you're asking somebody who doesn't necessarily know. The question is, who would you buy an EV from? They answered the brand that they like and that they know and they already, trust.
That's sad to me, because Toyota has been coming out with nonsense articles since 2019 exclaiming they're going to have a 900-mile battery and they're going to do this and that, when in reality they've done the absolute least in the EV space. I mean, look at this chart. In terms of ICE to EV ratio for sales at a company, they are literally last. Only 0.5% of all vehicles sold at Toyota are EVs, and they're still number one in people's minds for electric vehicles because of articles like this, exclaiming that in 2020 they'll have 6 new Toyota EV models, which never came.
As these things shake out, is the auto industry when it's all electric really that different than the auto industry when it's all ICE, other than there may be some new players? Or will people still go back to, I like this brand, I like the Bronco or the Mustang or whatever, and now there's an electric version or whatever model, they happen to have an affinity for? The shakeout period will be rough, but when we get to the point where people then can actually choose between these brands, I think that stuff will become more important, and that Toyota at 30% will be like, oh, now we can capitalize, even though right now, what are you going to buy from a Toyota that's an EV?
I guess my outlook is just completely different from Sebastian's. He is assuming that Toyota and other brands will develop products that are just as compelling as Tesla's. He said, when we get to the point where people can actually choose between these brands, meaning that right now it is not a choice. In the US right now, it's basically just buy a Tesla or stick with ICE. But Sebastian seems to think that the EV industry is going to evolve into this competitive market for branding, and people are going to have a choice because that's how it's always been. But no fiber in my being thinks that it is going to play out that way. As we've seen in the smartphone market, when you create an entire software ecosystem, as Apple has done and as Tesla is doing, there isn't much of a choice to be made anymore when picking a cell phone. When I go to buy a new one, I don't even do any research. I'm going with Apple. It's a no-brainer at this point, and other cell phone makers have found their niche. Android made their operating system accessible, and that's a good niche. And other brands in the auto market now are smartly taking that route. We've heard Ford CEO Jim Farley saying how they're no longer competing with Tesla. They're focusing on more expensive EVs. They're going to let Tesla have the auto market, the broader auto market, because they know that they can't compete with them. Rivian's strategy was to come out with products fast that Tesla does not already offer. Because with FSD and the charging network's ubiquity and reliability, and Tesla's energy storage systems, the Tesla ecosystem is becoming so compelling that Tesla is making the choice for consumers. They don't have to make a choice. That's how consumers want to feel. The auto industry is going to look nothing like it did in the past. Tesla is probably going to own 50% of all free cash flows in the entire market. Mark my words on that, because they own the charging. Everyone's using their chargers. They have FSD. Nobody has data of that level. Even BYD in China right now only makes $136 in profit per vehicle, while Tesla makes $3,001. That's 22 times more than the number 2 competitor to Tesla makes per vehicle. There's just no competition, and I can't believe that we're still having this conversation. Have a good day, everyone.